morning, everyone. I'm Rachel Fiore. I'm one of the librarians here at the Whittier Public Library, and I'm also one of the Veteran Resource Center coordinators. And our program today is brought to you by Community Conversations with Veterans, which is a partnership between California Center for the Book and Veterans Connect at the library. And the California Center for the Book is also part of the California Library Association. This is an initiative that offers California libraries the opportunity to connect more closely with veterans and their families. Further, it helps the veterans connect to the community and resources. So joining me today, we have Diane Hara, who is our other Veterans Resource Coordinator here at the library, and she'll be talking about our VRC here at the library a little bit later. We also have Vic Martin, who is the Director of Veteran Services at Shelter to Soldier. Thank you both for being here. And so just to lead off here today, we're gonna be hearing more from Vic first, and he's gonna share more with us about Shelter to Soldier and introduce us to Mia. So go ahead, Vic, I'm gonna hand it over to you, okay?
Okay. Thank you so much, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate this opportunity to be here and share with you a little bit about Shelter to Soldier, a little bit about Mia, my service dog, and a little bit about my story and what brought me here to Shelter to Soldier. I'll start with that. I was in the Navy. I served as a mineman in the Navy, so I worked with underwater explosives. A lot of what I did was different every single day. I've gotten to work with sea lions. I've gotten to work with helicopters and so forth. It's just been a tremendous opportunity to be able to experience that. Unfortunately, in 2012, I was deployed to the Arabian Gulf, where I was injured, and I suffered a brain injury. And as a result of that brain injury, I was also diagnosed with a lot of mental health diagnosis that I really didn't understand. I was diagnosed with severe anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, PTSD, panic disorder, and major depressive disorder. I might have already mentioned that one. But nonetheless, these disorders that I really didn't understand impacted my life greatly. I found myself, as a father, struggling to be able to give my family the sort of security and support I was able to give prior to my injury and prior to my mental health diagnosis. Oftentimes, I would leave the house and have episodes where I would become extremely panicked, and my body would basically curl into a ball, and I would find myself on the floor of a Home Depot or of another business, and not too certain where I was. I would convulse, vomit, sometimes urinate my pants. And this would normally result in 911 being called or emergency services. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part was having my children see these experiences and see the impact that it had on me. I believe that they absorbed a lot of those anxieties that I was suffering from, and they developed into their own anxieties. My daughter became fearful of going to school. My other daughter became fearful of spending the night at friends' homes and at her grandparents' house. And so it really impacted a lot, just not me in that moment of having that episode. Those sorts of episodes really led to me deciding that it was better for me to stay home. And as a result, I isolated in my home for more than 8 months. I was afraid to go out to the street to take my trash cans out. I was afraid to check my mail. I was afraid to go in my backyard. I was struggling with severe mental illness and not knowing or not having the tools to be able to help me with that. After about 8.5 months of not being able to participate as a father in my children's life, and after repeatedly needing to say that I could not attend my daughter's school functions or presentations, it just became too much of a pain, too much of an internal emotional pain. And that led to me deciding that it was better for me to commit suicide. It was a way for me to end the pain that I was suffering inside, as well as the pain that I was suffering on the outside. And a way for me to give my family an opportunity to live a more normal life. I was fortunate enough that my wife found Shelter to Soldier, the organization we're going to be chatting about today, shortly after I had made that decision to end my life. In 2013, I should mention, I was medically retired from the Navy as a result of my brain injury. And in that period of time from 2013 until about 2014 was probably the lowest I have ever been in my life. As a mineman working with underwater explosives, I was issued an explosive handler's license, which is something that I was very proud of. And to have that taken, it really affected my psyche. When my wife first found Shelter to Soldier, I was told by the VA that a service dog, a psychiatric service dog, may be beneficial for a lot of the diagnosis that I had and a lot of the symptoms that I was suffering from. And in my search for a service dog, I had learned that service dogs in the for-profit world are anywhere from $25 to $35, even up to $50,000, depending on the need of the handler. So for example, general psychiatric need, a level 1 psychiatric service dog is probably close to $25,000. But if you start to get into mobility, stability for the veteran, or you get into retrieval of items, a phone in case of an emergency, any sort of item, medication, whatever the case may be, when you start to get into those other tasks, the cost increases dramatically. And one of the reasons being is that, number one, not all dogs can perform that type of work. And number two, because of the extensive amount of training that goes into having a dog that is specifically task trained to perform tasks to mitigate a disability. So I was fortunate enough, after finding out that these places were $25,000, $35,000 and realizing I couldn't afford it, that I found Shelter to Soldier. At the time, they had only graduated one other veteran and one other dog when I had come into the program. So there really wasn't anyone to talk to find out if the program worked, if the program was beneficial, etc. It was this blind hope that I really didn't have any other options. I was on the cusp of ending my life, and I needed anything to be able to help me to get to tomorrow. When I first enrolled at Shelter to Soldier and spoke to the co-founder, Graham Bloom, who's our president, he explained to me and shared that 20 to 22 veterans a day were committing suicide. And that was in 2014, 2013. And unfortunately, that is still the case. The number of veteran suicides annually has actually gone up. And last year that it was recorded, in 2018, was the highest number of veteran suicides since it's been recorded. And so that is a real, it was an eye-opener for me that I was not alone. It was the first time that I had realized that other veterans were suffering similar symptoms that I was suffering from. And so entering into this program was not only an eye-opener in the sense of, wow, these dogs can really perform tremendous function, but also I'm not alone. That was a really big aspect of the program for me. When I first came into the program, we didn't have a logo. We didn't have a lot of the programs and support systems that we have in place now, and I'll kind of go over those in a little bit. But it was fairly elementary in the sense that it was the president of the organization and me sitting in a training yard working with my first service animal, and it was healing. I found that every session I went to, I was getting a little bit better. It took about 4 months of me going once a week to training with my dog where I actually got comfortable enough to stop somewhere on my way home from training. In this time of training, prior to that, I would leave my house and drive to training and drive straight home. If I needed gas in my truck, I would ask my wife to take my truck to the gas station to fill it up with gas because I was too afraid to stop. As I mentioned, after about 4 months, I was able to get to a point where I stopped at an antique store near my house that I had been hoping to go to. And I parked my car and I opened the door and I got out. I wasn't able to go in. I broke down crying. I got back in my truck and went home. But that was my first victory. It was the first time that I had taken a step out of my comfort zone, and I was able to do so because I believe I was able to gain that confidence through the Shelter to Soldier program. I ended up graduating the program with my first service dog, Kira, a tremendous dog that helped me beyond belief. She has since retired from her work as a service dog, and I'm now with my second service dog, Mia. I want to talk a little bit about Shelter to Soldier and what makes this program a little bit unique. Actually, a lot unique. All of the dogs in the Shelter to Soldier program are shelter dogs, every single one of them. And that is a huge testament to the dogs that are in shelters throughout the world. We find that dogs in shelters that are demonstrating behaviors that are anxiety-based, or what we call showing bad in a kennel, is really relative to their experience currently. For example, if you were put in a jail or a prison, your demeanor and your attitude would certainly change from what your normal attitude and demeanor is. So we believe that these dogs in shelters are no different. We go through an evaluation process before adopting any of the dogs in shelters into our program. That evaluation process is done exclusively by our president and co-founder, Graham Bloom, who's been training dogs for about 20 years now. He's a master trainer and is an expert in animal behavior, and is just an amazing resource for our organization, and it wouldn't be possible without him. But he evaluates every single one of these dogs that comes into the program, and he spends about 45 minutes with each. I would say that probably out of 20 dogs that he evaluates, maybe only 2 dogs make it into the program and are adopted. Those 2 dogs, once adopted, are brought into our training facility in Oceanside, California, and we work on training that dog over the next 4 to 6 months to learn its basic and advanced obedience skills. This gives the dog confidence, makes the dog understand that by working and giving it an outlet, it no longer needs to be destructive. Mia, when she was first adopted, was a terror. You wouldn't guess it now, but she had torn up couches, a lazy boy chair, carpeting, and a door frame in her previous house. She used to chew on rocks because of anxiety. you can see now, she's a very calm dog. And she's that way most of the time. I mean, she still gets those zoomies and likes to play and have fun, but she's not destructive. And it's because she has an outlet for her work. I have two daughters, and my house essentially is a collection or museum of stuffed animals. And something that Mia used to do is rip apart things. And now to see her in a room full of stuffed animals and laying there sleeping without the need to have to be destructive is just so rewarding for us as well. We've been able to give life back to dogs that would have never had an opportunity to have a normal life. We have a dog in our program right now who's ready to graduate our program with his veteran. And the dog's name is Julio. And he is a half Rottweiler, part pit and part something else. And he is the most adorable dog ever. Our team calls him Froggy because he has a big, huge frog smile, the biggest smile you've ever seen. That dog was to be euthanized because of space and because of behavior at the shelter. It's understandable. There's only so much space available, and dogs that demonstrate behavior that's concerning and may not be a safe dog for a home, that has to be a consideration, unfortunately, in our current situation. And we absolutely hope to change that. But currently, that is the situation. There's a tremendous amount of dogs that are euthanized in the United States every year. So Julio was going to be one of these dogs. He was to be euthanized at 5:30 p.m. And our president, as I mentioned, Graham Bloom, showed up at the facility at 10:30 in the morning with a couple other of our members of our staff. And he met a gentleman who was outside of the shelter with Julio, trying to get people to spend time with Julio because he didn't believe that Julio should die. He pulled at the heartstrings, of course, and Graham adopted Julio at 10:30-ish in the morning on the day he was supposed to be euthanized. The next day, we bring him to our facilities. The next day, he wakes up with something called parvo. Parvo is the black plague of dogs. If they get it, they can die within days. It's extremely dangerous, and most dogs receive vaccinations as puppies. Julio had lived on the streets and had never gotten the vaccination. And so he became sick. It's extremely contagious, and so all of our dogs at our facility were at risk. Julio was taken to the vet immediately in the morning, and through a lot of medical work was stabilized. He spent 3 months at my home in a kennel that we built on the side of my house to be able to care for him and bring him back to health over about 3 months. That dog, as I mentioned, is about to graduate our program with a veteran. He's amazing at giving love and doing his task work to mitigate the disability of his veteran. And that's really what differentiates a service dog from pets or from, let's say, an emotional support animal or therapy dog. A service dog, especially in Mia's case, being a psychiatric service dog, are trained specifically to do tasks to mitigate a disability. Those tasks cannot be protection, cannot be any sort of security work. It has to be things that are going to improve the veteran or the handler's life. And those laws and those specifications are specified in something called the Americans with Disabilities Act. That law, which is a federal law, describes the definition of a service dog and what the rights are of a service dog. Many folks don't understand that a service dog is protected under federal law, and with that can actually enter and have public access to any place that exists other than religious facilities. But if I was to go to a doctor's appointment or I was to go to a meeting, Mia is with me. She's also with me when I go to the bathroom, when I go to sleep, when I'm cooking, every time I turn around, Mia's there. And that's the benefit. This tool is there nonstop. And even when Mia takes her vest off and is relaxing on the couch with my daughters, she's still expected to work if I need it. So now we were talking a little bit about the behaviors or the experiences I was having prior to a service dog. Let's talk a little bit about the experiences that I have now. It's important to understand that service dogs do not cure any symptom. They do not cure any diagnosis. What they are is a tool to help you through that symptom. So for example, I mentioned that I had these episodes where I would pass out and panic. Now, when that starts to happen, and sometimes even before I notice it, Mia is interacting. You've noticed several times while I've been talking that Mia has reached up, looked at me, maybe given me a kiss, maybe just looked and put her head back down. It's a way that Mia is constantly feeling or constantly monitoring how I'm feeling. So everything from perspiration to shaking, to trembling, to movement, she notices. And because she's with me 24 hours a day, she becomes acutely aware of those behaviors. And as I mentioned, some of the behaviors are not even behaviors that I notice. If I was to raise my voice or to be upset, Mia would instantly react. Her first thing would be to interact with me to try to get me to focus on her versus me focusing on whatever is bothering me. She would elevate it to nudge at me, push at me, and get me to focus on her until I do. If I don't, it will escalate even further, where she in the past has actually, and I use this word carefully, but ran her teeth slightly over my finger. I don't want to say the word nit, but slightly run her fingers over or her teeth over my finger to get my attention, and it worked. If that doesn't work, she's trained to remove me from the situation. Another thing that I suffer from are night terrors and nightmares. Night terrors are a little bit different than nightmares in the sense that you wake up, your eyes are open, but you are not fully aware of your surroundings, and many times are still in a deep sleep state. So you're not aware that you're even standing up, for example, or swinging your arms. And in the past, I've accidentally punched my wife. I've accidentally knocked over my TV, some scary stuff. Mia's also been trained that when I start to experience nightmares or night terrors, to lay across my chest, not to allow me to sit up and get out of bed. That has been a tremendous tool in itself. In addition to that, while in public, she also provides boundary spaces for me. That's not so important now with COVID, but before it was extremely important. When I would be at a register and somebody would be too close to me, behind me, I would start to perspire, sweat, and run into one of those episodes. But now I can put Mia in with a command to sit behind me, and I can take a step forward and she will stay there in order to create a boundary space for me. That's extremely important for folks who suffer from mental health issues, and especially for veterans who suffer from hypervigilance. Oftentimes they feel in danger when they are in a public environment. And so having this sort of extra eyes allows them to feel more comfortable and to feel more secure. We're going to step back here and talk a little bit about Graham and adopting those dogs. And that's a really special aspect of our program, because once I mentioned those dogs come into the program, they're trained for 4 to 6 months on basic and advanced obedience. But that's training that happens before they are even eligible to meet veterans. So after that 4 to 6 months where they have all of their basic advanced obedience taken care of, then we move into having them meet veterans. The veterans are applying for services through Shelter to Soldier, and we are vetting them through an application process, through interviews, and once our board of directors reviews their application materials and they're approved, they start to meet some of these dogs that are within that pool of available dogs. We do speed dating. We don't believe in the next dog for the next veteran. That has never worked, and we just don't subscribe to that sort of theory. So what we do is speed dating. We have a veteran come in, and they spend about a half an hour, maybe 45 minutes with a dog, and get a chance to feel who that dog is, the behavior of the dog, the attitude of the dog, the excitement level of the dog, and so forth. And with that, and with the information that the training department is able to provide in supporting that decision, we want to make sure, obviously, that if we have somebody who has mobility issues, that we don't match them with a high level or high drive dog that needs extreme exercise every day. But nonetheless, we're going to support that person to find that exact right dog. Once we find the right dog, then the veteran and the dog begin the Shelter to Soldier service dog training program. That program is anywhere from 8 to 12 months long. And that is the veteran coming to our facilities once a week and training for about an hour to an hour and a half with their dog. And each training session is one-on-one. We've found that group settings for veterans are extremely difficult. So our program is specifically one-on-one training for these veterans and for these dogs. And it's at our facility, which is a private dog training facility. If for whatever reason in the next 6 to 8, 12 months that the dog and the veteran are going through training, if we realize that, hey, this maybe isn't the best match, we switch. We try to stay as fluid as we can to be able to adapt to every situation that may develop. With mental illness, things change all the time. And veterans who may feel one way one day don't feel the same way another day. So sometimes training sessions are not about the training, but instead just spending time with their dog. Sometimes it's just an hour-long cuddle session. And that's what that veteran needs at that time. So the timeline is very flexible. And that's why I say anywhere from 8 to 12 months, because not only does it depend on the veteran's ability to comprehend and be able to demonstrate the things that they're learning, but in addition to that, mental health sometimes comes into play that doesn't allow them to have an effective training session. And so we are aware of that. The dog and the veteran through that training must complete 3 exams. One is a public access test. One is a canine good citizen test. And the third, which is the most advanced, is the Assistance Dogs International Service Dog Task Exam. And that exam is really to determine the abilities of the dog to perform specific tasks to mitigate that disability that we were talking about. That's an accreditation company that we are still in the process of working towards gathering that accreditation, but we still are within their standards and have been within their standards for 4 or 5 years now. Once the dog and the veteran have passed those 3 exams, they graduate the program. We have a really cool little ceremony at the facility. They're able to bring their family. We have our staff and volunteers come out to support them. And we have a ceremony. We transfer ownership of the dog into the veteran's name. And the veteran goes on to hopefully live a positive life with their service dog. However, we want to make sure that that happens. And so one aspect of our program is that post-graduation training is number 1 mandatory. We have weekly, for the first month, the veteran and the dog come in post-graduation every week, once a week, just to make sure that they're on, that they're doing well, that the transfer into a home environment has gone well, and to make sure that they don't need anything. And then after that, we move to 1-month sessions where they go for a month without checking in. And then we move to 6 months and then a year after that. Every service dog in our program must be recertified every 2 years. And so part of our postgraduate training program is really to ensure that the graduate is up to par and the dog is up to par to be able to recertify at that 2-year mark. So that's kind of a little bit about how Shelter to Soldier works. One more aspect on the post-graduation. In addition to the mandatory sessions that we have, post-graduation mandatory sessions that we have, we also provide free training for the remainder of the dog's life. And that means that the veteran can call at any time in the dog's life and ask for help on any subject, and we're going to help, whether it be health-based, behavioral, whatever the case may be. Maybe they've identified a new task that the dog could do to benefit their life. That's something that we will look at as well. The board of directors has been amazing at being able to support veterans who come into our program, not only with mental health diagnosis, but who are also suffering from physical diagnosis. Symptoms that result in a lack of mobility or the ability to bend over and stand up. So our primary function is psychiatric service dogs. But when those veterans present additional issues, we present to the board of directors that additional training may be needed, and they approve that and obviously approve the extra expense that goes with that as well. All the dogs in our program are sponsored. We don't receive any money from the VA. We don't receive any state or federal support. We are completely donation based. We receive grants that are a huge help, but majority of what we get is by the community donating to our mission. And I'm really proud to say that that our administrative overhead was less than 10%. And in our 7th year or almost 8th year of operation, I think that's very much a testament to the passion that goes into this program. None of us are getting rich by doing it, but we're doing it because we truly believe in this program. We have trainers who take dogs on their off time to Disneyland to give them exposure, to take them to sporting events to give them exposure. We recognize that each one of the veterans who takes these dogs are going to go on to live a life hopefully filled with excitement and joy and journeys. And so we take these dogs in all sorts of environments to ensure that they are acclimated to be able to be beneficial in every environment. So we don't want to have a dog that's a service dog go to Disneyland and become so freaked out that they can't perform their job. And so everything from partners in the airline industry, where we bring our dogs onto actual airplanes and train with them, all the way to doing car rides and to going to the beach and going to Costco and going to Home Depot and all of these places that are inevitably going to be places that our veterans are going to have to go to or that are going to choose to go to, hopefully. Each dog in our program roughly costs anywhere from $15,000 to $20,000, and that's how much the sponsorship is. And the reason for that is that the cost involved when we adopt a dog into our program, it's with us almost 2 years. That money provides everything from vet bills, food, housing, training, which is very extensive, to everything. Everything is encompassed in it, even down to the gear. So when a veteran applies at Shelter to Soldier, they get a service dog. When they graduate the program, they have never taken $1 out of their wallet and given it to Shelter to Soldier. They've never paid $1. They will receive a fully trained psychiatric task trained service dog. They will receive the vest. They will receive the boots that all of our dogs are given to make sure that in these hot weathers, their paws don't get burned, and all the gear that they need to have a successful life. And then, as I mentioned, we continue to support them postgraduate as well. I've had an opportunity in this last 7 years to really be able to share my story and a little bit about what Shelter to Soldier does. And I have to admit that it's been extremely healing for me, because in sharing my struggles and my own mental health issues, I feel as though others hopefully are feeling as though they are normalized by having these sorts of diagnosis. It is not expected that somebody can go to war and be under the sort of anxiety, pressure, and expectations that come with war and combat, and expect them to come out and function on a normal level without some sort of limitation. Even friends I know who have gotten out of the military and have moved into professional fields are still struggling with certain aspects of their psyche and their mental health. Whether they're going to therapy, or whether they're taking medication, or whether they're involved in some or other treatment, they are doing something to benefit their mental health. And I think that is the key for a lot of our veterans going through the crisis that we're going through. The veteran suicide is at epidemic levels. Mental health is developing, but it's just starting to be learned that therapy for PTSD, therapy for a lot of mental illness diagnosis, needs to be treated on an individual basis and not on a group basis. Because as we see in our organization, every single veteran who comes to us with separate needs. And that brings me to why these dogs go through so much training. We can't issue a standardized PTSD service dog. Veterans come to me from everything from sleep disruptions, social anxieties, road rage, depression, isolation, all different sorts of symptoms, all under the umbrella of PTSD. So to create a dog to be able to help with those is unrealistic. We need to look at each, right? Oh, go girl. We need to look at each individual applicant and each individual veteran for their own needs, and to determine what would be best to be able to help them. And not only in service dogs, but in mental health treatment in general. So it's amazing, as I mentioned, what these dogs can do. Mia is just a ham. She has no better joy than putting on her vest and working. And it's really remarkable to see, because she's used it as her own tool. Mia, lay down. Lay down. She's used it as her own tool to help with her own anxieties. So much like service dogs, veterans, or much like shelter dogs and dogs who are maybe suffering some sort of anxiety-based behavior, will also benefit from this program. Our tagline is saving lives two at a time. And in my work and in working with veterans, it's become very apparent that that's exactly what we're doing. I now, in my role as the Director of Veteran Services, I oversee all services that are provided to our veteran community, our veteran applicants, our veteran students, and our veteran graduates. Everything from a mental health liaison who we have on staff, who's a licensed clinical social worker. He's available to all of our students and graduates at any time for free. That one-on-one counseling and being able to provide that as an organization that provides service dogs is a huge benefit to these veterans. I mean, they are benefiting from mental health treatment in addition to just receiving a service dog. But our services extend. We have a law firm who is partnered with us, who supports our veterans through residential employment and even public access challenges. And so we've really been able to create this network of resources to be able to support the veteran whole, rather than just dealing with this need for a service dog and then wishing them the best of luck. So it's been awesome. I think I've covered so much here. I hope that I didn't leave anything out. Is there anything that that maybe you could help me with maybe asking a question that may be able to help me explain more?
Yeah, you mentioned that you had this is your second service dog. How do you know when it's time to retire a service dog?
That's a great question, and it's a decision that's made on the part of the handler and the training team and the board of directors. We really want to go off of the handler's decision. They will really know when it's come to a time when the dog is no longer, or is getting close to no longer being able to function as a service dog. These dogs have to keep up with us, you know, while we're normally out living our lives. Of course, with COVID, it's a little bit different, and me is getting lazy, but we work 12 hours a day, sometimes 10 hours a day, with commuting, working, commuting back, grocery shopping after work, and so forth. So these dogs really need to be able to keep up with us all day. As a handler starts to notice their dog having a degradation in their ability to be able to work, they're going to communicate that with our training department. Our training department will be able to work with them in realizing, is it behavioral, or is it truly just they're getting to the time when they're ready to go, ready to call it and retire. With Kira, I was able to start realizing that fairly soon, and we made that decision as a group, as a team. Once the decision is made, the veteran has the option to keep the dog as a pet, or to relinquish the dog back to Shelter to Soldier to help another veteran, because although it isn't a service dog, it could be an emotional support animal, or it could be a pet for a veteran who doesn't necessarily qualify or need a service dog. And so And so once that decision is made, that's kind of the process. We start to fade out that first service dog, and the veteran starts to get introduced to new service dogs. Oh. So starts the process all over again. And that's what I did. I started meeting other dogs. I met about 4 or 5 that I loved, but I just didn't feel the bond with. And then I met with Mia, and probably after about 15 minutes, I knew that she was the one. And so we began our training program all over again. And so you go through the training, and although it's maybe not as intense as the first round because you know the basics, there's still a lot more to learn. We're constantly, as an organization, building and growing. And so we find ways of coming up with different tasks and different things that make it to where it's more beneficial for the veteran. So for example, when I first went through the training, there were some commands that we weren't training dogs on that we had now started training dogs on, that I didn't know, that I needed to learn and understand, and it was extremely beneficial as well. So that's kind of how the process works. Again, no cost. So now the veteran, for example, me, I'm on my second dog. I've never paid $1 to Shelter to Soldier, and no veteran ever will.
That's so wonderful.
One of the things we see with mental health, and one of the issues that a lot of mental health providers have with prescribing service dogs, is the limited ability or limited life term of that therapy. So a service dog can only provide work maybe for 4, 6, 8 years, but what happens after that? And is the aftermath more detrimental than how he was initially? So our program has created this return to have the veteran come back and meet another dog, so that now we're extending this therapy out indefinitely. It's not just 4, 6, 8 years. It's now we're looking at 30 years even. Oh, wow. And so it's remarkable that number one, that we have the support to continue our mission to be able to do this. But Corona has hit us extremely hard. We have had several of our fundraisers, and as I mentioned, we're completely community-based and community funded, and so we've had some fundraisers that we have had to cancel, which are big contributors to our mission annually. And in addition to that, we've had many fundraisers that were going to be done by other folks to help us and support us, and those have had to be canceled as well. And then lastly, a lot of our corporate sponsors, a lot of our Red Star sponsors have had to lay off a large number of their employees and are not in a position to be able to donate. So our mission is at a critical point where we really, really need the support of the community. And I always say that, you know, we're not looking for somebody to donate $10,000 or $20,000. We're looking for several hundred people to donate $1. Mm-hmm. That's what we need. You know, doing a reoccurring monthly donation of $5 can be a huge impact because we're able to count on that money and be able to plan for it. So reoccurring donations are huge for us. You know, everyone is more than welcome to visit our website, sheltertosoldier.org, and get a chance to, number one, see some of the success stories we've had. We've graduated. I mentioned I was the second recipient. We've graduated some 30-some graduates now and their dogs, and the success stories are just fabulous and are remarkable.
That's great. And yeah, we'll make sure and share the link with our promotional advertising too, just to make sure that people can find it. And I had one other question. When the veterans coming to the place and doing the training, are they bringing the dog home with them during the training, or they only can do the training at the facility? Like, do they have to get used to the family too, or is it just focused on the veteran?
So there's a couple of questions in there, and those are all great ones. Number one, the dog is staying at our facility during that process. So the 6 to 8 to 12 months that the veteran is training, the dog is staying at our facility. And the reason for that is that we mentioned the dog needing to be trained on specific tasks just for their veteran. And that's what we're doing. When the veteran leaves for that week and goes home, hopefully they're able to reflect on the huge victory that they've had. They're able to reflect on their time with their service dog, but they're also able to kind of miss their service dog a little as well. We want that because that certainly builds the bond. But when they come back, they're going to notice an improvement in their dog and some of the behaviors that we've been working on. And so that week that they're gone, the training department's hustling to really work on training that dog on moving forward in the task work it needs to learn. If the dog was to go home with the veteran, and there are other programs that do that send the dog home or send a shelter dog home with a veteran, and then have the veteran come to training. The issue is that these dogs aren't trained. When we first got Mia, you know, she was ripping apart stuff and peeing everywhere and trying to chew door frames. Bringing a dog like that into a home environment is irresponsible and unsafe, especially when veterans have children at home. So we believe that we want to give that veteran every single tool and every single thing that they need to be able to handle that dog in any situation. And when they bring that dog home, have all the tools necessary to facilitate that. In addition to that, you also mentioned the family. And that's a huge aspect of what we do. We believe that the more support that the veteran has, the more that they're going to succeed. And so we encourage the family to be a part of our program as well. We actually even have coloring pages for kids to help them understand what it's like to have a service dog and what the rules are about having a service dog, and to help them to understand what it's like for their parent to have a service dog, and what that means. But in addition to that, we have families come in and do training as well. It's normally towards the latter part of training, but the veteran's family will come in, understand what it's like. It's unusual because a service dog with a vest on, by federal law, cannot be pet or distracted by other folks. And that's just so they can focus on their handler. As Mia's been looking at me, as we talked about, she's focusing on how I'm doing. And if somebody else was distracting her, she would not be able to do those checks. And so, so that rule of not petting a dog is true with a family as well. So when my family is out and Mia's vested and we're at the zoo walking around, my children know that they cannot pet Mia. When she takes the vest on Now they know they can cuddle with me on the couch and watch a movie with her. So yes, the family is a huge part of it. Their mental health providers are a huge part of it. We require that the veteran who is in our program is continuing in treatment. So they must be involved in some sort of mental health treatment while engaged in our program, partially to make sure that this program never becomes overwhelming. The idea is that this program be supportive and helpful and positive, and we want to rely on the mental health professionals to ensure that that is the case. So our criteria for veterans is post 9/11 combat veterans, and it's a demographic that we've been able to identify as severely in need, and a demographic that we're truly able to help long term.
That's so great. That's so wonderful. Diane, did you have any questions or comments before?
I want to say, you know, we want Vic. We love hearing about you and Mia, and we definitely want to you know, advertise about Shelter to Soldier and all this wonderful information and opportunity, so so that people would be able to partner with you, individuals. So yeah, thank you for sharing all that.
Thank you. And I'll also mention that Shelter to Soldier, we serve not only San Diego County, but we serve Orange County, all of Los Angeles County, all of Riverside County, and portions of San Bernardino County as well.
That's so great. Yeah, and so we want to share this, your story and this video also with we have about 18 veteran volunteers that work with us, so they're excited to see it too. And Diane, did you want to tell them a little bit about our VRC here?
Sure. Our VRC is a very special place in our library. Whittier Public Library, we find that veterans are very dear to us, and we had pre-COVID, we had a place where our volunteers every day, Monday through Friday from 10 to 2 would come and be available to any veteran or their families or people or friends who have questions. We are a referral center. We would refer these people to our Department of Military Services for the Los Angeles County Veteran Service Officer, who is a direct link to the Veterans Administration. And our VSO, as we call him, Veteran Service Officer, would be here every other week, one day on Friday. And we would be getting a lot of people at our door wanting to see him, and he helped people immensely. He would take the time to talk with them and get their claims through, answer their questions. But then this COVID happened, so our library at this time is closed to the public, but we as staff are here trying to still serve our community. We have an opportunity to offer books for checkout on a curbside pickup basis. And also our Veteran Service Center volunteers are meeting virtually every week. We are Zooming with them every week on a regular basis to keep up with any questions they may have, interaction amongst them. Also, our Veteran Service Officer is part of the meeting, so he is there to answer any questions. And we want to just let people know that we are here. In addition, our library is available with any phone calls. So if you call our library between the hours of 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, there is a reference librarian who is here who can direct that question to Rachel or myself, who will then talk to our either our volunteers or our VSO, and we can get their questions answered. So we are here for all of our veterans, even though we are closed. We'll Zoom with them, we'll talk with them over the phone, but we are here. All they have to do is call. So I just wanted to say that, yeah, we are totally veteran dedicated, and just thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. It just means a lot to us. Thank you, Vic and Mia.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And I will I'd just like to echo your comments about the impact that COVID has had on the veteran community, especially those suffering from mental illness. And it's important to understand that most veterans now are not able to participate in their normal therapies. So a lot of veterans were able to participate in art therapies, in warm water deep meditation therapies, in acupuncture, in acupressure, all of these different sorts of avenues and therapies that were helpful to them, they are no longer able to participate in. In addition to that, they're facing severe isolation, and it is detrimental. I believe we are going to see an uptick in not only mental illness cases in the veteran community, but abroad. And in addition to that, the suicide rate, I fear, is going to increase. So the more that we can bring on attention to the mental health issues that are facing, again, not only the veteran community, but the community as a whole, the better off we're definitely going to be.
That's so true. One thing I just want to add real quick before we end. After you viewed this video, for anyone who's going to see it online or through our website, we're going to have a link to a short survey available just to help us with public programming going forward, to see what else we can do to get the information out there for veterans. But with that, I just want to thank you, Vic, so much for sharing your story with us, and thank you for your service, and Mia too. Thank you for being here. We really, really appreciate it. This was so great.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye.